Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of the Heinz History Center, welcome to Remembering the McGinnis Sisters, Food and Family Stories. My name is Sierra Green, and I work as an archivist here at the History Center. Before we begin, we at the History Center want to heartily thank the McGinnis family for partnering with us to preserve the history of their family business. We're honored that they've entrusted to us the original photographs, documents, and artifacts that reflect their story. We're also delighted to have members of the McGinnis family here with us this evening. Our time together is sure to be filled with rich memories and deep insights into the impact and legacy of the McGinnis sisters and their stores. A couple of housekeeping remarks. We have live captioning available provided by ACS Captions. You can access this by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. This will be available throughout the event. We welcome you to submit any questions that you have for the McGinnis family throughout the program by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the program. If you need any technical support or help, please use the chat at the bottom of your screen and we will provide support. Thank you all again so much for joining us. We'll have more info towards the end of the program on some special McGinnis Sisters recipe giveaways, as well as our post-event survey. Again, this will be towards the end of the program though. Now I'd like to introduce Leslie Sibilic, Senior Curator with the Heinz History Center. Leslie will provide us with a brief history on the store, as well as some background on the History Center's approach to collecting local food history over time. Leslie was instrumental in helping to bring the McGinnis Sisters collection to the History Center and has been a key contributor to this program. Leslie.
Thank you so much, Sierra. And I will just reiterate Sierra's welcome to all of you this evening. We are so fortunate to be offering this program, and we are thrilled to see so many of you joining us this evening. You know, when the McGinnis family made the decision to close their stores in 2018, we at the History Center took notice when the local papers and the local media honored their legacy of 7 decades of service with multiple profiles and news stories. We really reached out almost immediately to figure out how we could preserve some of this material in our collection. And for those of you who aren't perhaps familiar with us, food and foodways have been part of what the History Center has collected since our opening on the edge of the Strip District in 1996, that is the new museum, and frankly, even before that. With our focus on the region's diverse ethnic history, the uniqueness of Pittsburgh and its neighborhoods, and our interest in well-known Pittsburgh institutions, including Heinz and Isley's and Eaton Park, how could this not be the case? I mean, goodness sakes, we have a giant ketchup bottle on the roof of our building. Now, our own food-related artifacts really run the gamut from very large pieces. For example, the landmark neon lobster sign that once graced the outside of Klein's restaurant, a downtown institution born of necessity and really featuring originally its mother's, the recipes of Hannah Klein, her own family recipes. And you might hear a similar story tonight. And all the way to modest kitchen implements used by home cooks, creating their own recipes based on Italian and Polish and German, African-American and Jewish recipes from their own family origins. We've gathered materials from local restaurants and beloved institutions like Kaufman's TikTok Shop or Carson Street's Beehive. And our archives collection includes materials related to other grocery store chains in Pittsburgh history. For example, McCann's, Giant Eagle, and Donahoe's, and even in some cases, small local grocery stores or butcher shops, perhaps preserved in a single snapshot or photograph. Now, before I get into a brief history of the stores tonight, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that for the History Center and our own food-related artifacts, we do have some materials featured in the current exhibition, A Very Merry Pittsburgh. That is our holiday exhibition, and cookie cutters, cookie presses, candy molds, things that really capture the season will be on display there in our McGuinn Gallery until January 17th, 2022. So if you are looking for something to do over the next coming weeks, please feel free to check out those things on display at 1212 Smallman Street. We encourage you to check that out. But tonight, we're really focused on the story of the McGinnis family and the McGinnis Sisters special food stores. And in planning for this program, we decided that maybe the best way to start this would be for me to give you a little bit of history about the stores. And I will also be introducing our facilitator for the evening, Dr. Ashley Rose Young. And to start, the stores really emerged out of the aftermath of World War II, when Elwood, returning from the war, couldn't find a job. And to put this into a broader historical context, scholars have tracked that after the war, nearly 50% of World War II veterans were involved in stories regarding the founding of their own personal businesses. I think the actual figure was something like 49.7%. So this origin of the McGinnis stores, the McGinnis family story in this case, really is part of a broader national theme. But also make no mistake, and this will clearly come out in the discussion tonight, and you've already seen it in the photos, this was a family affair. The first small produce stand that grew into a combo store and deli featuring mainly recipes from family matriarch Rosella McGinnis, from her own recipes made in her own kitchen, experience honed by working with her family's tavern in Baldwin. So those of you who are joining us from the South Hills tonight, this is a rich story with multiple South Hills connection. Now, also, just to be clear, some of you who are familiar with the stores and the name might be thinking, well, okay, I remember there was a store in Castle Shannon. There were different branches of the McGinnis family. There were brothers and there were sisters. We are focusing on the stores that were ultimately connected with the McGinnis sisters this evening. So no, you're not imagining it. There was a story connected with the store in Castle Shannon, but that's actually not so much part of our discussion this evening. Instead, we're focusing on the stores that emerged from that original store on Custer Avenue, and at first grew to be 3 stores: the Custer Avenue store in Baldwin near St. Wendellin's Church, another store on Brownsville Road, and then one that was established out in Monroeville. And here again too, that growth of the business out into Monroeville, an area dramatically expanded after the suburban expansion of the post-war baby boom, is also part of that post-war story. Now, the stores became neighborhood staples until the torch was passed from Elwood and Rosella to their daughters in 1981, and the stores were rechristened the McGinnis Sisters Special Food Stores. And I have to say, when you're looking at the media coverage for this, the fact that it was it was originally 4 sisters and then it becomes 3, but oh my gosh, the sisters, these are women who are now the executives in charge of these grocery stores. It was noted as something unique right away at the time. And 3 of those sisters, Sharon McGinnis Young, Noreen McGinnis Campbell, and Bonnie McGinnis Vello, became the key leadership team, truly embracing their roles as women and sisters to create a distinctive brand focused on gourmet and international, organic and locally sourced foods, and then also great customer service. You know, they really are leaders, both in this idea of embracing, and you'll see this in the support materials this evening, as well as the conversation, truly embracing this idea of women and sisters in their marketing materials, and also really being at the forefront of identifying things like organic foods and becoming part of a conversation on this before those ideas really are part of this larger national cachet. So they're truly at the forefront of some of these movements. They also became active media figures, bringing the store a higher brand profile through multiple television commercials, other TV show appearances, and earning numerous awards, all the while balancing the sense of family and tradition on one side, and also keeping an eye on new consumer trends and trying to stay up with a constantly changing industry. Now, over time, locations were changed and some were added. A larger store on Route 51, also known as Sawmill Run Boulevard, replaced smaller South Hills stores, and a new market was opened in the northern suburbs of Adams Township in 2008. And a new generation was brought into the operation of the stores. And you will also meet some of that generation this evening. But regardless of location, the McGinnis Sisters Special Food Stores came to mean a certain high quality of product and a unique shopping experience for generations of Pittsburghers. And I have to say, that is even especially true during this holiday season, kind of from Thanksgiving through New Year. So it's entirely appropriate that we are hosting this conversation in December this evening. Now, our collection, as Sierra already mentioned a little bit of it, includes everything from a wealth of photographs, and you saw just the smallest hint of those this evening. There are marketing and advertising materials, film and video, including many of those wonderful television commercials, and also artifacts illustrating the operation of the store. All of it now preserved as part of Pittsburgh's larger story for generations to come. But I have to say too, for the History Center, this really has come to us with multiple benefits. There's the privilege we have been entrusted with in preserving the collection. We also got out of this a connection with a wonderful colleague at the Smithsonian. I first met Dr. Ashley Rose Young in 2018 when one of her colleagues in the food history department, Teresa McCullough, came to the History Center in conjunction with our Prohibition exhibit, American Spirits. Teresa was the beer curator and she came to do a program. And after the program, she said, oh, you know, the History Center is wonderful. And by the way, did you know that there's someone in the food history department at the Smithsonian who's from Pittsburgh? Now, of course, we love any connection to Pittsburgh whatsoever. And in this case, we said, oh my gosh, we really need to know who this person is. We need to meet them. And we were introduced to Ashley, and Ashley in turn said, oh, guess what? I'm connected with the McGinnis family. And so it really was this fortuitous set of connections that we met Ashley. And I think it was just a month or two before the announcement came out about the stores. And so really it was Ashley who helped connect us to Jennifer DeRora, one of the members of the third generation. And that's really how the History Center donation eventually came about. And Ashley is both a talented scholar and a presenter. And so it is my pleasure to introduce her as the facilitator for tonight's program. And so here now she gets her official introduction. Dr. Ashley Rose Young is the historian of the American Food History Project at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. And she's the host of Cooking Up History, which is the museum's cooking demonstration series. And I think you will get a very clear sense tonight of what a talented host she is. She's wonderful at facilitating both conversation and then digging in to find deeper meanings in what is being discussed. She also co-curated the museum's main food history exhibition, Food Transforming the American Table, along with several other members of the food history team at the National Museum of American History. And she is currently working on 2 books. One is an academic manuscript about New Orleans street food culture, and the other is a biography of Creole chef Lena Richard. Both of them, I might add, are books that sound like just fantastic topics. Ashley was born and raised in Pittsburgh and graduated from Upper St. Clair High School. So a shout out to any of you joining us from Upper St. Clair this evening. She earned an MA and a PhD in history from Duke University and a BA in history from Yale University. And if all of that was not enough, she was also a visiting scholar at Oxford University. It is truly both our privilege and our pleasure to welcome Dr. Ashley Rose Young here this evening. And if you want to join me, Ashley, I will turn the program over to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie. You're making me blush with your kind words, and I'm so excited to be here tonight. I'm going to provide just a few opening remarks, and then I'm going to bring in my wonderful aunts and cousin to really get into the nitty-gritty of our family story. In preparation for this event tonight, I actually had the chance to go home to Pittsburgh and visit the Heinz History Center. And that's when I got to meet the wonderful staff members who've helped me bring this program to life, especially those, at the Heinz History Center and the Detry Library and Archives. And when I was visiting that day, I came across materials like our family's beloved kielbasa wheel that you see pictured here. I was taken on a special behind the scenes tour to the staging area and to actually see this object being cared for by the conservators at the museum. And that was really amazing. And you see this image of my Aunt Bonnie around 1968. She was a few years into college at the time, working at the Custer Avenue store, prepping that amazing kielbasa that my grandfather made from scratch, and putting it on the kielbasa wheel, which became such a touchstone for customers and for family members. I can't tell you how often as a little girl I would run by that counter and grab off a piece of kielbasa. And I just have such sweet memories of those early years in my childhood. Now, I will say this research trip to the Heinz History Center, going through boxes of materials, seeing these wonderful objects as well out in the staging room, as I said, it was really emotional for me. And it was strange in many ways. For my profession, I work as a historian at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. I work really closely with my colleagues who are curators to identify objects that are significant to the American story. And we bring those into our collections and we preserve them and we care for them in perpetuity. And we work very closely with our donors to acquire those objects. And when I was in graduate school at Duke University, I worked in our rare book library for years, actually as a service librarian, helping researchers who came into the library and wanted to look at archival materials. So I'm used to being on the other side of the desk, so to speak, helping others find their answers to their research questions and working with our donors as we bring in those objects. But when I visited the Heinz History Center, I wasn't in the place that I'm used to. I was on the other side of the desk. I was a researcher, and I'm a family member whose family story is being told and is preserved and cared for so beautifully by the Heinz History Center team. And it's a strange feeling, but it's also a really meaningful feeling. And I have to admit, during my research trip last month, there were moments where I was shedding tears. It was a really emotional time to go through those boxes of materials, specifically in the Archives Center. And, I would come across something as simple as a business card. That was my mother's. And you see a picture of that on display here. And there's something about that kind of classic McGinnis pink lettering and the store logo surrounded by that floral kind of arch. It really just struck me. I saw my mom's name and I just thought about, not only my connection to her as my mother and as my best friend, along with my father, of course, and my fiance, Christopher, too. But, seeing her name on that business card also struck home the role that she played as a matriarch in my family and as a business partner to my aunts and as a community leader. It's this small piece of paper, but it symbolized so much of what she was doing and what she was trying to do at that time. And I think that business card's probably from around 1990. And you'll see some images later on of these amazing outfits that she and my aunts were wearing. It so fits the aesthetic of that time. But I just want to say that this is an emotional experience for my family. We're crying. We'll probably cry throughout with happy tears, but also tears of sadness because we miss our family members and we miss my mom every day. There's not a day that doesn't go by that we're not thinking of her. But what's so beautiful about this program is that it gives us a chance to revisit those beautiful decades, those many decades of time that we spent together, and to honor the memory of my mother, but also to honor the memory of my grandparents, my grandfather Elwood and grandmother Rosella, and dear colleagues like Ray Coffey, who passed away recently. Our heart goes out to her family. I know some of whom are attending the program tonight. So this is, I think, a chance for the entire community, the McGinnis Sisters community, to come together. And that's really beautiful, and I'm grateful for that. So I wanted to say thank you to the Heinz History Center team for so carefully and precisely cataloging our family records and really caring deeply about these objects and artifacts and bringing them into the collection and recognizing the importance not only to my family, but the greater Pittsburgh area. And also thanks for brainstorming ideas of how we might present the family history tonight. Being so close to this topic, it's so personal to me. It was sometimes hard to see the forest through the trees, but conversations with Leslie were so helpful. And I can't thank her enough for providing those kind of broader insights into positioning the McGinnis Sisters in a larger historical context. And obviously this program program could not have happened without the support of Matt Strauss and Sierra Green and the entire team at the Dead Tree Library and Archives and colleagues across the Heinz History Center. Thank you so much for creating this opportunity for us. Now, as I've hinted throughout the program tonight, we are going to draw upon some of those artifacts. Like I said, they'll make you smile, they'll make you cry, they're really fun. And so keep an eye out for those. And I also want to note that in preparation for tonight's program, I really took the time to connect with my aunts and my cousins and broader family members just to hear stories, to awaken memories, to refresh my perspective on the store. And that's been really helpful in kind of bringing everything together for this evening. And there are 5 central themes that I think are going to guide us through our conversation tonight, which will be about 50 minutes, and then we'll go into a Q&A. But those consist of the lasting influence of the original founders, my grandfather Elwood and grandmother Rosella McGinnis, the personal growth and coming of age story of the sisters as they assumed leadership roles in the 1980s, the continual implementation of new business ideas to expand the store's offerings and meet the needs of community members, the importance of multi-generational involvement in the store, including the incorporation of third-generation family members. And those include my cousins like Jennifer and Jamie and Megan, and my siblings like my brothers, Max, Patrick, and Eric, and more cousins and extended family that could possibly be named at this point. Finally, we're going to take some time to talk about the lessons learned, right? After decades of shared experience, and share some advice, right, that my aunts and my cousin have for new entrepreneurs. So as you can imagine, we have a lot to cover in just under an hour. So I think we should get started. And at this time, I want to welcome my Aunt Bonnie McGinnis Velo and my Aunt Noreen McGinnis Campbell and my cousin Jennifer DeRora. So happy to have you here tonight. And I just want to give you a chance to greet our audience. So if you want to say hello, please do.
Oh, hello, everyone. Glad you could make it tonight. Happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. So nice to be here with you.
So I wanted to start at the beginning. And when I say that, I mean, I want to start with Elwood and Grandma Rosella, the original founders of the business. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I want to play a clip. If you don't know my Grandma Rosella, you're going to fall in love with her after this. I want to play a clip of her speaking about the very first days of the business and the challenges of providing for their family in those early years. But this clip is also amazing because the family did succeed. They got through those struggles. And it just shows you the tenacity that the founders had, that my grandparents had, and how they grew to support their 8 children and their grandchildren. So if we can play that clip, that would be great. And for us panelists, I'll remind us to mute our microphones.
Let's get into the story of the McGinnis sisters, and let's have you start telling the story of how it all began. We turn the clock back, right, to the 40s?
To the 40s. Mm-hmm. And, well, when my husband came this one day and said, what do you think of opening a fruit store? I just looked at him and I thought, well, he doesn't know a banana from an orange.
And Rosella, at that point, did you get very worried?
Well, I did. And I think we had $1,200 to open this store. So we built this kind of a block, nothing fancy, and it was a struggle. He used to go at 2 o'clock in the morning to get the fruit and the vegetables down to the yards and come back. And we at that time, we had 2 children, and I was expecting. So on December 23rd, they opened a store, and I came out to look at the store, the way it was put together and the way we're going to open it, and then went home and went to the hospital and had a baby boy.
And where was your husband during that time?
He was at the store, and I remember the doctor saying when the baby was born, where's your husband? I said, call him at 882-9393, and you tell him that the baby boy's here.
He dropped you off at the hospital and said,
Oh, yeah.
gotta go.
Through the swinging doors at Mercy Hospital. That happened 7 or 8 times. Goodbye.
Good luck with the baby birthing, right?
Yes.
Did you have any vision of where it would go? Did you think this was just going to be a small store, something that a mom and pop store that you two could handle?
No, I used to clean the store on Sundays, and it was open because the church people came down that same street. And I thought, well, maybe somebody will stop in and get a dozen of oranges. But a lot of times they went right by.
In truth, you say that you used to pray.
And I prayed. I'd say, oh, if only somebody would come in and buy a dozen of oranges, you know.
You were waiting for God to deliver the customers.
But, we hung in there. We sold Christmas trees, and
How much were Christmas trees back then?
I think $2.50, $3 for a real nice one, and you'd hold it. And then they'd say the wrong shape. And it was rough, but, well, the children helped as they grew. At 8 years old, they learned to run the register, and
That's probably when they were tall enough to see the register
well,
keys.
they still do. The grandchildren, you'd be surprised how the grandchildren work. Bonnie has a daughter that the people love her. And we have a grandson that comes in every summer from Grand Rapids, and he's just terrific at the register.
That's great.
So that was a clip from Ann Devlin's Pittsburgh's Talking Show. And I just love seeing my grandmother's personality there and hearing her voice. I know when we first watched that clip, it definitely brought tears to our eyes, but I want to give my aunts and my cousin a chance to just reflect on the kind of legacy of my grandparents, because I know that was a major part of the ethos of the store, to maintain the legacy of Elwood and Rosella. And I also wanted to hear from my Aunt Noreen in particular about her just recent thoughts on my grandmother Rosella's role, and really the paramount role that she played in the business that may not have been recognized in early reporting in papers about the store. So if you guys would like to weigh in, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And just remember to unmute.
Well, I was reflecting on this the last few days, and my mother, growing up in the era that they did and opening the store in the 40s, she was always behind the scenes, and everything was written as Mr. and Mrs. James E. McGinnis. And I'm the youngest in the family, so I recall being home with her, and she was developing the salads, the macaroni, the potato, and the coleslaw, the German potato in our home. And we lived 2 blocks, 3 blocks from the store, but she would cut through the fields, through the backyards. And I was still at home, as I said, and I was, pestering her to give me something to do. So she would let me peel carrots and things like that. And we were immersed in it, so we didn't realize, until later what it was really about. But he would call and say, we need these potato salads, and she would make them. And we would walk through that field. She would hold my hand really tight. Maybe I was 4 or 5, and the people were waiting for her. I just remember that the people were there waiting for those salads to arrive. And she did that all through the history of the company, where she could take any recipe and come home and take a day or two, and she would call and she'd say, I have that one that maybe we tried at Tambellini's, or maybe we had it at some event, and she'd say, I have it now. And then her job was to bulk it up so that we could sell it in quantity at the store. And so she would laugh. She would say my dad didn't know an apple from an orange. And her father, as you had said, had a tavern, and he taught her how to cook. My mother said when she came home from St. Wendelin's, my grandfather, who owned this bar, made soups and turtle soup and chili, and he would have every bowl in the kitchen filled with vegetables cut, like precise, and then he would have her put it together, which is the mark of a exceptional cook. It's in the spices, it's in the flavoring. And she could do that. She could taste things and figure it out. And so really we ran with it. It was something that couldn't be replicated anywhere else. So it really helped us to be unique. Yeah.
Aunt Bonnie and Jennifer, did you have any thoughts to add to the kind of legacy of the founders and how you tried to incorporate that into the McGinnis Sisters brand?
Right. Yeah. Well, it was always quality from my mother, and she was the taste tester at the store, and she would come in because we would eventually have other people making her recipes. And she came in and she did the taste test and made sure we were making it correctly. But the items that our customers really loved were the salads, a potato salad, coleslaw, macaroni that we made on site, and also a few German recipes with the potatoes and the bacon. But she was quality control. And I always thought that she was the brains behind the business, with customer relations and always talking with the customers. I remember Jennifer saying, "Is Grandma popular?" Because she was always talking to the customers. But yes, and it was great to see that clip. I actually forgot about that clip with Ann Devlin so many years ago, but oh my gosh, that's fantastic. What a great memory.
And Grandma was generous with her time and her talent. I remember she would share her recipes or how to do something, and then if she would actually give her phone number out to people and say, "Call me if you get into trouble." I mean, I can't imagine doing that nowadays and having someone call, and she would walk them through how to make something, especially for the holiday time. So it just remembering that, especially this time of year, is really special.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I have memories too of Grandma on the phone with people. I think I witnessed her walking people through recipes, like you said, Jen. And when I'm just kind of, that memory is now coming to the fore, which is amazing. So quality control, obviously, or just the commitment to quality, is a huge, I think, tenet of the founders, of our grandparents. And something else that I think is very lasting in the store's history is the commitment to creating a really equitable and robust employee work culture. And one of the things that I find particularly interesting that our grandparents put into place was the employee profit share. And so I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit to what that is and why it was so innovative at the time when Elwood and Grandma Rosella decided to implement this employee benefit.
Well, he established it in 1972, and it was very unique. And in fact, when we took over the business, oftentimes accountants and attorneys would say, "You're doing what?" And I remember going to meetings, and he'd have a lovely dinner once a year. And I think that first dinner was at Michael's in Baldwin Borough. And there may have been maybe 12 or 15 employees. And he really was showing them how if they worked toward the goals of the business, that they would end up being rewarded. And he gave everybody, I think it was a silver dollar to hold on to, if you remember that, Bonnie.
Yes.
And it was just so unusual, but he was so proud of that. And I had the documents, I have them somewhere in our files. And he was really proud of that. He was a big believer in having people have a stake in the outcome, that they would share in the profits. And so it was just quite unusual. And it was a real pride for my sisters and I to be able to announce that year after year after year. And we'd often have a little party. And it changed as things changed later in the 90s, and 401ks came along and different things happened in the marketplace. But it was, I think for me, at the end, you have Jack Schricker here and Marilyn Kuhn, I'm assuming people can see this slide, and Al Choder. And when I saw them retire, I was the person that helped facilitate the paperwork to move them on in their life. I was so proud of that I could say, and all those people, here, this is for you. And I've, they really thanked us, and it was just an unusual, particularly in the grocery industry. It would have been unheard of. It would have been unheard of. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And like you said, it created a nest egg of sorts for employees. For employees who spent decades. I mean, Gert Foster, coming after she had her kids, coming back to work at the store for 42 years, Jack Schricker for 50 years. I mean, there's so many employees who spent decades at the store. And I think that's a testament to the benefits that you were committed to providing for them, as well as really robust health care. This is what the stores were known for. And as a daughter of one of the McGinnis sisters, I'm really proud of that kind of work culture that you created together. And kind of transitioning now a little bit, we've been talking about the founders, we've been talking about my grandparents, but I do want to bring the conversation now to the sisters, right? And to your experiences as entrepreneurs. But before we do that, before we start talking about your role, your leadership role that really emerged in the early 1980s, I do want to give you a chance, especially Aunt Bonnie and Aunt Noreen, to just share a few memories of what it was like working at the stores when you were children. Aunt Noreen, I know you talked about going to the store through the fields with Grandma Rosella, but I know that there were certain tasks and duties that you had to do, stacking pop bottles and things like that. And I'm curious to know, when you were growing up, did you like working at the store? Was it a chore? Did it feel fun? When you were 10 years old, 15 years old? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh,
Bonnie, you go first.
that's so true. My first job was putting away pop bottles, because way back then they were glass, and people got, I forget how much money they got when they returned them. And I did that with my grandfather, Pappy, every day after school. But then I moved on to being a cashier, and Gert Karcher taught me how to ring the register and to give change. Back then, you had to count and give change. And I thought I was a pretty big deal that I could do that. Of course, the customers were happy about it. And then, in junior high and high school, the bus stop was right at my father's store. So we would get off the bus and go down to the store and work. Cashier in the bakery, moved up to the deli. And at that time, I think we received about $1.25 an hour, a little bit less than the other employees, because he said, I pay room and board for you. So I didn't like that, but that's what his answer was all the time. But it's not that I loved working at the store, but you didn't say no. You got to the store, and that was the main. You did not say no or complain. My father just wouldn't have listened to you, But yes, learning how to ring the register, working in the produce department, and then in the deli, it was a great experience. It really was.
Well, I remember, Ashley, your mother broke her wrist in a bicycle accident, and I wanted her job. And I maybe was in 6th grade, and she bagged potatoes after school and bagged onions. And so I said to my dad, I want her job. I didn't even ask if she was okay, but I wanted her job. And he said, well, go up and apply for it. Now, here you are, maybe I was 11 or 12 years old. I didn't know that it was pre-planned that I was getting hired, but I put on a nice outfit, and I went and I answered questions like a real interview. And when I reflect back on everything, and even in one of these pictures here, I was in high school, I was managing the front end. I had a Monday night stock crew I was in charge of, and I loved it. We always created a fun atmosphere. I trained the cashiers at the Brentwood store. I trained the cashiers in the Monroeville store, and I was still in high school. But I loved that type of work. I would say, yes, I complained. I, like Bonnie, I remember your mother and I approaching my dad and complaining about our wage, and he said the same thing to us. And that was the end of that. It was just, you're working and you're on the schedule. I also learned that like my sisters would do his books, and then the idea was you would train your replacement. So I'm the youngest, again, as everybody, I've said it several times. So my sisters would train me on how to do the deposit, how to do the books. And the other thing I learned was you had to have an activity. So I would sign up for things. I was a dance teacher. We did sports. Everybody did something different, because if you did have an activity, you could not be scheduled, of course. But yeah, I learned so much. I was doing tax returns at a very young age. I was doing deposits. I remember in high school, Sharon and I we'd want to go on a date, but the store closed at 9. And if we hurried up and counted the cash, we could be done by 10. Then we had to be home by 11, so we could run to Brownsville Road with our boyfriends, get a pizza, come back and we had to be in by 11. And we thought there was something wrong with us, but he really kept a sharp eye on us. But she would look at me and she'd say, don't you make a mistake, because and if we were off by like $5, he would say, start again. Now, if it was less than $5, we could get away with it, but we would be like, because we wanted to have a date, like a normal high school person. So there was great learning. I mean, when I think back what I learned in that business and absorbed about how to run a business, and the confidence I had when I went out into the world, I don't think you can't pay for that. You can't go to school for that. So
I love that, Aunt Noreen. And I remember my mom telling those stories of having to count that money. And then she would always throw in, and it was the worst because we always smelled like deli meat when we went on our dates because of the store. And that always cracked me up. But, I'm loving walking down this like memory lane, trip down memory lane with you all. And I want to keep going on that trip, but maybe advance a little bit into the 1980s. And I want to talk about that time when you had this opportunity. This opportunity came up, and fairly quickly, for the sisters to step into leadership roles in the early 1980s. And I just wanted to hear about your experiences. I've heard stories, Aunt Bonnie, I just love that story of you learning how to drive the produce truck. So I was wondering if you could kick us off and just talk about that, because it's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good story, because our brothers started their own store on Castle Shannon unexpectedly. We didn't really know they were going to do that at the time. And I was dating my husband, Remo Bello, and I think I probably said, oh my gosh, because, my brother Pat drove the produce truck. He went to the yards, he went to Trax Farm. And Remo said to me, well, I'll teach you how to drive that truck. That's not that big a deal. And that was an international flatbed, 5-speed dual range. So he took me, we were dating, and took me to South Park, where the swimming pool, the parking lot. And we drove around the parking lot, and it was empty at night, and all different areas, that had parking lots. And then we went on the road, and we would drive around, and lo and behold, I was able to drive that truck to the yards, to Trax Farm. And yes, I do admit there were a couple times when I got stuck, on a hill or whatever, and people would be beeping at me. but it was really, so I thought, hey, what a quality guy. I'm going to stick with him. And of course I did 40 years later here. But yes, and I think what really happened also was, I didn't know it at the time, but I think it helped keep our employees with us, because I'm sure they were thinking, what if, my brothers had gone, and are the sisters going to be able to take over the business? And, everyone stuck with us and, and worked with us and retired, at our store. I mean, I'm so grateful that the main people, the deli managers, the store managers, all stuck with us, and we were able to succeed.
Because you just jumped in and
Because-
got to work.
And we got to work, and I don't even think we thought about it. And I think they had confidence in us then. I'm sure they were thinking, I hope this works out. But we just kept on going. And I'm just so grateful to the employees who did stick with us. They were part of our extended family. It was super. Yeah. I think that's amazing.
It is. It is. And as you were stepping into your roles, I mean, you're going to the yards at 2 a.m. in the morning to pick up produce. And I bet you were probably the only woman down there. But you're doing these things, right as second wave feminism it's well on its way in the United States at that time. And this is the era of shoulder pads, of big hair, of pantsuits, and of some women breaking the glass ceiling in white collar corporate jobs. And I'm just curious, in this cultural context, how did you come up with rebranding the store as the McGinnis Sisters? Really embracing that identity as women and as sisters. And I'm curious to know, what advantage did it give you at the time?
Well, actually, that was my father, Elwood, mentioned that. He said, I think you ought to change it to McGinnis Sisters because you were unique. 3 or 4 sisters at the time in business. And we just went with it. But it was his idea. He thought that women would empathize with us and shop at our store. Now, he might have saw that on TV, I don't know, or whatever, but it was his idea. And we changed it because it was really unique back then to have women in business, because it was a man's industry, and especially sisters. So yes, that was Elwood's idea.
And can you talk a little bit about getting the word out? I think my mom was really working at that time to kind of build the marketing scheme or the brand for the McGinnis Sisters, reaching out to local reporters, trying to get the story out there. And I think I remember either you or Aunt Noreen telling a story about one of the reporters coming at a time when my mom was not ready for a photo shoot. And so I was wondering if you could share that story.
Well, I think we were kind of trying to figure that all out. And Bonnie and Norma, Bonnie, I think it was you, or maybe it was Norma, just thought, well, I'm calling Marilyn McDevitt Rubin from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And they had come to Monroeville and taken a picture of the 2 of you behind the deli. And you called us. Sharon and I worked in our offices in Baldwin, and Sharon was pregnant with your brother Max. And I mean, very pregnant, because he was born in January and this was around October, because we had pumpkins in the store. And neither of us had makeup on. Neither of us were expecting photographers. And the phone rang and Bonnie said, they're coming. You're going to get your picture taken today. And we're like, well, we don't have our mate. We were just not prepared. And she goes, too bad. They're on their way. Go to the store, which was right across the street. Our offices were literally a half a block away. And these photographers are coming, and we're taking advantage of this. And Marilyn's doing a story on us. So I still have the picture in my mind, because your mother was so huge with this baby. And then we had the pumpkins, and her and I were thinking, well, maybe if we stand behind a pumpkin, or how could we configure this? And I think at that point, then she thought, I'm taking control of this media stuff. And, she was very bold over the years and reached out and took risks. But in the beginning, we didn't know what we were doing. We did, but we knew we needed some sort of attention. We needed to draw some attention to ourselves, so that was just a fun memory for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Bonnie, I want, as you guys were rebranding to McGinnis Sisters, you had to come up with a new logo. You had to come up with new signs. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how you went through that process, Aunt Bonnie, and came up with the very characteristic McGinnis Sisters kind of swoop logo.
Well, that was really simple because there was a customer in the Monroeville store, the Penn Center store, that, we were just chatting, and I found out that she was a graphic artist. So we met at, I think it was a Dunkin' Donut that was in the Monroeville parking lot, on the main 22. And we met her for coffee maybe 2 or 3 times, and she came up with that logo. We liked it, and she was a customer, and that's how easy it was. It wasn't a big firm, not a big company. One of our customers who worked from home and was a graphic artist. So I was going to wear my name tag tonight just to kind of show that off, but I put it back.
Oh, I love that story so much, because it is just about homegrown networks, and other women supporting women as you're building your businesses.
Right.
And so that brings a smile to my face for sure. And as I just want to segue a little bit here into a slightly different area of focus on those years in the 1980s, which is how your reputation as a business really came to inhabit gourmet groceries and fine foods. And also, you kept and maintained that identity as being a multi-generational family business. And so there are 2 really fantastic commercials that I want to show that are actually from the early 90s here, but they do show those ties to family and also this commitment to gourmet foods, in this instance around the holidays, to heritage turkeys and low salt country ham. So I'll ask panelists to mute, and we'll enjoy those 2 commercial clips.
With Thanksgiving just around the corner, now is the time to order your holiday turkey at McGinnis Sisters. These beautiful birds are raised exclusively for McGinnis Sisters. They're 100% natural with no chemicals or additives, naturally moist with no injected fats or oils. Hand-raised holiday turkeys, a family tradition at McGinnis Sisters.
Orders soon. Supplies are limited. In Monroeville, call 858-7000. In Brentwood, call 882-6400.
And now a word from the McGinnis Sisters Special Food Stores. The holiday season is here. Time to order your low-salt country-cured holiday ham from McGinnis Sisters. These holiday hams are extra lean and low salt. They're hickory smoked just like the ones my dad sold 40 years ago. Fully cooked, ready to heat and serve. The McGinnis Sisters and our families wish you Happy Holidays! The McGinnis Sisters Special Food Stores, Monroeville and Brentwood.
Oh gosh.
I love those clips. Those were actually, the second one was actually filmed in my family's house. So that's really bringing back a lot of memories of our dining room. And gosh, me and the cousins in that last picture is kind of hilarious. But again, what I love about these commercials is that it really focuses in on the McGinnis Sisters store brand as a place for high quality gourmet products. And so I wanted to chat a little bit with you about how you came to inhabit this space of fine food and gourmet food. And I think that ties back to the Penn Center location in Monroeville. So I was hoping maybe Aunt Bonnie, you could speak about even prior to becoming the McGinnis Sisters, how expanding into the Penn Center location in 1976, right below the Westinghouse offices, really kind of created an opportunity for you to move in from kind of a regular grocery store to a gourmet grocery store.
Oh, yes. This here picture is that is the Penn Center store, and that was during the holiday, and that's when and we had a raised office there, and I said we have to leave this location because people were lined up, and they could hardly function. But that was a holiday there. But we really learned a lot from our customers that worked at Westinghouse. Westinghouse rented space above us, office space. And those customers would come into the store and ask for certain things that I had never heard of. I was raised with American cheese and Swiss cheese and jumbo and ham, and they were asking for brie cheese from Europe and all these different things from the Netherlands and Germany, and which I've never heard of because we didn't sell that in our South Hills location. So we had to go and source those. And we went to a fantastic market in Akron, Ohio. It was called the West Point Market. And the owner was Russ Vernon. And he welcomed us with open arms and gave us a tour of his store. And he also introduced us to Haddon House Foods, and he arranged for his saleswoman to be our saleswoman. And she really educated us in fine foods that we were not raised on. And she helped us. So we had a great contact there with Russ Vernon, who was just a fantastic man and really top specialty foods. And he helped us and reached out to us. Became a mentor.
Mm-hmm. So it really seems like you had that interplay between your customers and other kind of players in the field of gourmet foods. Aunt Noreen, did you have thoughts on that too?
No, I mean, I just remember that woman, that saleswoman's name was Zila, and it was funny because we always would tease, like, we didn't even know how to pronounce some of these things, and these customers really, their jobs took them elsewhere. And we would say, can you bring the jar, bring us a label? And you wouldn't have had a cell phone back then, but if you bring us the label, we'll find it for you. And then we would often, for example, I was looking at a recipe the other day of my mother's. We had this Churchie's was the name, champagne mustard. And we took her a jar, and then she would develop a recipe. And we would take it back to the store and demo. Here's how you use the product. Here's what you do with it. And that's how we sold it. We couldn't just put it on the shelf and hope that it would catch someone's eye, because people didn't know what to do with these things. And so we developed a whole demo program around these new items, and we just kept it going all the way through all the years. That you can't just, Bonnie developed this passive demoing, and then also, people would come in and see us cook something and make something of it. What do you do with it? People in Pittsburgh back then, they were basic rigatoni, pigs in the blanket, a lot of ethnic foods, but they hadn't heard of all this stuff. So,
and you can see how they flocked to the stores in that image of the Penn Center location. As you mentioned, Aunt Bonnie, that was around the holidays. And as you said, it was like, we got to expand. We got to expand this. The space isn't big enough for our business. And so I did want to transition a little bit here to talk about your decision to expand to the Monroeville Shopping Center, and to ask you what it was like building a store from scratch, you know, the aesthetic you were going for and how you hoped to continue to distinguish yourselves from other grocery businesses in the Pittsburgh area. And so by a point of comparison, I do want to bring up a slide here of the Brentwood store location. And you'll see what I love about this store, if I'm not mistaken, it used to be a fitness facility that you guys had kind of refurbished and turned into a store. But you can see like the flashes of hot pink in the signage and things like that. But I did want to get a sense of what you were going for in the mid-90s when you had a chance to really build an example of a modern grocery store that represented your brand. And I know that we have some funny stories about the contractors kind of balking at the pink that you had throughout the store. But if you could speak about that, I think our audiences would love to hear.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's the Route 51 store. And yes, that was an exercise gym. And you could see the gold on top. My sister Sharon picked that. That was the walking track. And in fact, we talked to my dad about decor, and he was like, well, what's that? You know, how much are you budget? You know, he didn't like the figure because that gold was, you know, it was expensive. And you know, because my father was used to maybe some wallpaper, that might have been it, and some paint. But and then we decided on this fuchsia color because it was feminine, and we did buy a lot of used cases. And at that time there was it was called electro painting, and the Hussman company developed that color with my sister Sharon, and I think they called it McGinnis Sisters boysenberry, because we didn't want to be green for produce, red for the meat department, and so on. So we wanted to have an entirely new look, you know, to reflect the women in business. And it worked for us. People loved it. Yes, it worked for us.
Well, I think as you transitioned from Elwood's vision of what the store was into this vision, I remember, Noreen, you were saying at one point, Elwood would come in and say, well, where's your wall of values? And you said, Dad, we're doing it our way now. And we're focusing on the hallmarks of the business, which was the fresh produce and the sliced fresh deli, you know, having the butchers, but you didn't have that wall of values because you needed to make room for the Church's mustard or the olive oil or things like that. And it was that evolution, the warm and serve foods. We needed space for those types of things. And it's interesting how things evolve naturally, and they really worked. And in this case, for this Brentwood store, and then also the Monroeville store that was in the Mosside Boulevard shopping plaza, they were successful.
So I'd like to add there, ladies and folks, well, I mean, there were a couple things that were happening behind the scenes as well. Around that time, you know, computers were coming aboard across the planet, and we couldn't buy product conventional, like let's say Pepsi or Coke, for what Giant Eagle was selling it for. We started to be differentiated in the marketplace behind the scenes. We weren't big enough, so we did, you know, pivot to these other types of things. And the other thing with that Brentwood store, that was our first loan, the sisters. And PNC had been our bank. They had represented my father, and that was a juggle, because they wanted my dad to be involved in that loan and co-sign on it. And my dad was in his 60s and he didn't want to do that. And we didn't want spouses involved. It was just going to be us girls. And PNC took a real risk with us, and they didn't want to at first. And we, you know, came in there, and we had a woman attorney from Pittsburgh, and and we prevailed. And when we won the Ernst & Young Woman of the Year award, Cy Holzer, who was tops at PNC, got to speak, and he spoke about that. And he always called us his girls, he was just so endearing to us. And they took a chance on us, But every time we went to a meeting, people, mostly men who were traditional in businesses, didn't know what to do with us. And of course, then we came out with our cases are going to be pink. But they eventually, even the handshake initially, like how do you shake hands with a woman? And my dad taught us to just get in there. And, we just kind of took the lead. I don't think it was conscious of like, we're kind of bulldozing our way in here. We just did it because we weren't raised with limitations that we couldn't do anything. The only thing we weren't permitted to do was cut meat. I was thinking about that today because the meat shop was very dangerous. And, but anything else we could do. And he never really put restrictions on us. We closed, we opened, we drove trucks. He would find out we did something after the fact and say, I didn't mean you guys, maybe I drove a truck in a winter storm, and he'd say, I didn't mean for you to do that. And I said, well, you shouldn't have showed me how to drive a truck because, but I think those things going on behind the scenes actually moved the needle on the front with what were we going to buy? We couldn't get paper towels. We weren't in the same ball game anymore,
Well, you're bringing up, Aunt Noreen, the importance of driving trucks, and that means you're going out to the yards, but you're also going out and meeting with farmers. And so I kind of want to segue here to talk a little bit more about the relationship that you built with local purveyors, not just purveyors of grocery products, but also those Pennsylvania farmers and the decades-long relationships that you had with them. So I want to play a clip now, and then after I want to chat a bit more about how the business grew and changed through the 90s and early 2000s. But for some context, this clip features Rania Harris, a local television personality, doing her holiday shopping at the Monroeville store for a feast that she's going to prepare during her TV segment. And she has a chance to chat with Aunt Bonnie and talk about the importance of Pennsylvania growers. So if we could cue up that video, I'd love to share that with you all.
Well, here I am at McGinnis Sisters in Monroeville doing all of my marketing for all of the ingredients that we're going to need to create this spectacular holiday feast. And speaking of spectacular, would you take a look at this produce department? I feel like I'm in Paris doing my marketing for my produce. I'm having so much fun that I've already loaded up my cart with things I don't even need for the feast. But I do need some red bell peppers because I'm going to cut these into a little confit to go around a box of asparagus for our shrimp cakes. And I know that I've eyed some gorgeous asparagus over here. And speaking of gorgeous, I think I see one of the McGinnis sisters. Bonnie, how are you?
Good, Rania.
It's so nice to see you.
And good seeing you.
Thanks, and let me just tell you, I'm not kidding when I'm saying I'm having a blast. I'm like a kid in a candy shop in your produce section here.
Great, I'm glad you like it.
Well, I do. Tell me about your produce. Is this local or do you go out of state? What do you do?
We buy our produce at the produce yards every night.
Oh, wow.
In addition to that, we buy at local farms in the area.
Well, it's nice to know that Pennsylvania has so much to offer. This is so beautiful. I bet.
So we had to kind of cut the clip off there pretty abruptly because that host, as you can imagine, has a lot to say, but I do think what she gets across, I just love how she describes that produce section, that beautiful produce section at Monroeville, as if you're shopping in a market in Paris, because that really hit home to me because of the quality and the commitment to local producers that I think actually is reminiscent and reflective of a European style market. But I just wanted you all to I wanted to give you a chance to kind of speak about some of the farmers that you've worked with, for years, and the relationships that you built. Can you share some of their names or the products that were important to you over the years?
Well, I'd say Trax Farm, Simmons Farm, Triple B Farm with corn, especially in the summer. McElhaney's corn township, and the corn, because we would only sell fresh corn. Once it was 1 day old, we would take it off the rack and package it, but people would come to us and know, it was always fresh that day, and they would deliver or we would pick it up. But we were able to extend that local produce, into the fall, and it just was fantastic, especially in McElhaney's farm in Adams, because he came and delivered every day. And I saw a picture lately where there was a little boy, maybe 5 or 6, which I think he might have just went into college now recently. So I was, oh my goodness. And we really developed relationships with our vendors and became such good friends with them. We were so lucky. Oh, when I think back with that. And I'm sure some of the viewers remember our Adams Township tent out in front of the store every day with peaches from Chambersburg and, all the different local produce. It was, really something.
Yeah, I think that our produce was really the crown jewel for us. Well, there was a lot of things, but that was something that we were so proud of. Even as a youngster, my dad, I can remember the tracks. He would go out to tracks and get, particularly on the weekend, a couple sacks of corn. And I was the cashier on the weekend, Sunday mornings in particular. And, people were waiting for that corn to come. And then I think in the 90s, we were approached by the Pennsylvania Association of Sustainable Agriculture. And there was I can't remember his name, and I'm getting too old, but we were the first ones he approached. And because oftentimes you couldn't break into the giant niggles or the chains, and many purveyors came to us first. And we would get them going, and maybe a spaghetti sauce or whatever. But he came and he said, I'm a new guy. I'm from California. I think it was from Washington State. And we're going to do this thing, and we're going to connect the farmers to the restaurants, to the groceries. And, would you be interested? And I said, of course. They had logos and they had programs, but he was really just getting started. And I had a list of farmers. In fact, initially contacting them, they were busy. They were on their tractors. They hadn't really even thought about marketing their own places, or, they maybe had a farm stand that they ran in the summertime. But we made those connections. And I remember I had a meeting in the Monroeville store, and we invited everyone to come. And these farmers came from Volant, PA, and Indiana, PA, and Somerset. And the one guy I remember was Ron Gargaz, because his hand was so big when I shook it. I mean, it was just this huge, huge person, and the most gentle giant. And when we told them the volume that we would need, and his happened to be grass-fed organic beef, I think his face, the look on his face, and so there was problems in that the volume wasn't there with a lot of small farmers. So they had to decide, do we go to a restaurant? Do we do McGinnises? We were always competing with the restaurants to get that product, but we would take it, we would try it. And we would have a farmer say, would this work? And we'd say, well, plant some and we'll see. Because, there were still times where Pittsburghers maybe were reluctant to try something really outside of their comfort zone, but it was a lot of fun, I think. Yeah, you remember all that, Jennifer, as well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I can remember going with Elwood to go pick up produce, definitely. But I think we were promoting the family farm really before it was hip and popular, which was really important because there was a quality and a freshness, which was great. And so we're very fortunate to have been able to be pioneers in that industry. And now we're seeing everyone benefit from it years later.
And, when I think about the store more, I was there growing up, but I was the youngest of over 20 grandchildren, right? And Jennifer spent 16 years building her career at the store. I was seeing it more from the outside, occasionally coming in to help during holidays and things like that. But, there were innovations and just different experiments that stuck out to me. As Aunt Noreen said, the crown jewel being produce, working with Uncle Pat, going down and just building those beautiful displays of produce. But there's also another innovation that kind of comes to mind for me in the late 90s. And it really ties to the family's basket business. So For our viewers, you may not be familiar, but the McGinnis Sisters are really known for their gourmet gift baskets, so popular during the holiday times. And so I want to talk about this or show this commercial of my mother actually chatting about our basket offerings and talking about this expansion, this pop-up store that the McGinnis Sisters experimented with in the 1990s down in Station Square, which was kind of a touristy place that people would go to, and definitely the kind of spot where you would perhaps pick up a gourmet gift basket for a family member. So I want to play that video, and it'll give you guys a chance to meet my mother in a way. So if we could play that now, I would love that.
You will delight everyone on your holiday shopping list this year with the McGinnis Sisters gift basket, filled to the brim with fun and tasty treats. Hello, I'm Cynthia Brennan, along with Sharon McGinnis Young. Sharon, great to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Why have gift baskets become so popular?
Gift baskets are the perfect gift. They come already wrapped, so you don't have any work. They're full of fabulous items, and anyone who receives a gift basket from the McGinnis Sisters will be surely impressed.
Now, you have different themes, is that correct?
That's right. This year we have our Pittsburgh basket, which is not filled with the same old little candy bar or pickle. They really are nicely filled with entrepreneurial items from great Pittsburgh companies. We also have Italian baskets, surf and turf baskets, and office party baskets.
These make great corporate gifts.
Right, especially the office party baskets. It's a great way to feed from 20 to 50 people and a wonderful party atmosphere. They're huge baskets, so anyone who receives them is really impressed. It's a great way to show your customers or clients that you really appreciate their business.
And you will ship all around the country.
We UPS nationwide, and we deliver in Allegheny County every day.
Terrific. Tell us about your new holiday boutique down at Station Square.
Well, this year we're having a store in Station Square for November and December only to feature our gift baskets and holiday entertaining ideas.
As you all know, McGinnis.
So I just love that clip there, and hearing my mom's voice again is so wonderful. But I think it really ties into my memories of growing up. And as I hinted above, the holidays were always a time for the family to come together to support the business. We all pitched in, right? Even when we were in elementary and middle school, like I said, I certainly have memories of helping out at the store, especially with the gift baskets coming together. You know, I have so many family members, especially extended family, who spearheaded working in the basket business over the years. I remember my Aunt Lynn and my Uncle Bill coming down from Michigan for years to kickstart the holiday orders. And in 2010, my cousin Jamie took over the basket business as a member of the third generation. And she actually continues operating a basket business under her own name to this day. But kind of switching to this idea in the role of the third generation, Jennifer, I wanted to ask you about your memories, right, of the holiday season at McGinnis Sisters, and why is that time so special to you? What is it about the holidays and the family, extended family coming together that really means so much to you?
Well, it was a busy time of year and everyone was working really hard, but it was also a wonderful time of year because you saw customers who might have been with us through the ages, who were shopping with us for the holidays because maybe their grandmother shopped with us for the holidays. And it was a time that we could really come together with our employees and help them out. There were certain things that we shouldn't do. And one thing I was remembering this morning was, our butchers and our meat shop, it was run so well. And so the butchers would say, you can wait on the customers and let us worry about people's turkeys and hams, because they had a system and they didn't want others, although well-intended, to kind of goof up how the orders were situated, which I can appreciate. But one of the most favorite things I loved about the holidays is you would see that people would come in who weren't the normal shopper. Maybe a spouse was sent to the store with a list, or a college, kid home from the holidays, and they wouldn't know what they were looking for. And we would go up and down the aisles and help them. You would see the deer in headlights, and you could say, how can I help you? And if you still couldn't find out what they needed, we would say, well, let's give a call home, because you didn't want to be running all over Pittsburgh trying to find one item for that holiday dish. And really, in that way, we turned our customers into the extended family as well, and continue to cultivate those experiences with them over the years. And so it's tiring, but it was a great time to be together with our employees and with our family and with our customers.
Mm-hmm. And Jen, I wanted to chat a little bit more with you as a member of the third generation. You know, we had several family members who chose to build their careers at the store, and you were the first in the third generation. Can you talk a little bit about the perspectives that you brought to the table and some of the things that you tried out in regards to social media or other things you implemented at the store, specifically from that perspective of being in a different generation than your mom and aunts?
Well, one of the first things that I implemented was the point of sale system, which we all take for granted today as you're checking out at any shop or online, and thinking about how we had to go through actually uploading all of that data by hand. And that was my first real job when I came back to the company after working elsewhere for 5 years. And then as we gone on, I really took hold of the jobs that needed to be done. So helped work with a designer to design our loyalty customer card. We called it my sister's favorite customer card as a sort of a joke. My grandfather would say whoever he was with was his favorite. And so we were saying that our customers were our favorite at that time, and then implemented through that point of sale system a loyalty card program where we were outreaching to customers through print, mail, through our email marketing, and then into social marketing, social media marketing on Facebook and on Twitter, and then eventually on Instagram. And what we were trying to do there was to help build confidence within our customers. If you think about the way that my grandmother cooked and then maybe the way that our moms did, that knowledge was not always passed on. And so we had customers coming to us needing help. They might be having a family that had dual incomes. They wanted to make a home cooked meal but needed assistance. And how can you do that quickly after you come home from work? Or how do you meet a special need for a dietary situation? And so we used our social media platforms to help our customers understand who we were, understand our quality, but then also do some showcasing with our recipes. But I'll also say that I learned so much from our key non-family employees. Working with our leaders like Kathy Lochran and Carl Persch really taught me a lot about hard work, about perseverance, and ingenuity to get things done. Because when you're in a small and local family business, you don't have the opportunity to make many errors. You have to take something that might have been a mistake and turn it into something great. And we always really did that. And so I'm proud of the things, you know, when you're in the business, you don't think that they're significant. But as I looked back this week, I thought, oh my gosh, wow. You know, I helped create all of the things that you see on this screen right here. And then we're able to partner with my cousin Jamie in that bottom picture, doing the local food shows and spreading the message to the region about our wonderful products and the family farms that we were partnering with. So I'm proud of my accomplishments, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to contribute back to Elwood and Grandma's legacy and the legacy of our moms.
And speaking of our cousin Jamie, she reminded me actually about the McGinnis Sisters YouTube channel, which has some really wonderful content from the stores. And, you know, I want to shift here. Unfortunately, time is flying by, and I want to shift a little bit to talking about the latest expansion of the stores in 2008 to opening up the Adams Township location. Just this gorgeous, gorgeous store. And we have this beautiful clip from the McGinnis Sisters YouTube channel. It's about 2.5 minutes long, but it takes you through a tour of the store that is narrated by my Aunt Noreen and my cousin Jennifer. And what I love about this is it kind of showcases the new technologies that Jennifer was helping to bring into the store and the way they were using social media to reach new audiences, new customers. But then also for us here tonight, gives us a chance to see what the store was like in action. So I'm going to give my colleagues a chance, a few seconds here, my Heinz History Center colleagues, to pull up that YouTube video. And once we get that going, we will take a trip down memory lane to around, I guess, the early 2010s to check out that gorgeous store, which my mother and aunts really spent a lot of time designing every single detail, really changed the color palette of the stores, moving away from that classic McGinnis boysenberry to richer tones of oranges and greens and coppers, and just a beautiful kind of rebranding, a modernization of the stores and the McGinnis Sisters brand, which I really think you can see come across in this video. So enjoy for about 2.5 minutes, like I said.
Yeah, and here's our deli. You know, deli's a Pittsburgh thing. Goes way, way back. You know, the Isley's chipped ham we all grew up with. And we do it really well at McGinnis Sisters. We keep it so fresh. Here's part of our cafe. Hey, that's my sister Sharon there, supervising our chef. We're cooking off some beef kebabs there. Everything can be made right in front of your eyes, and we have wonderful hamburgers. They're so huge. It's kind of a meal for two.
Oh, I really love the cafe. It's just such a great place to sit down and have lunch, or you could do work there because of the free Wi-Fi. The fireplace is just so cozy, and there's a lot of families that come with their kids as they're getting ready to get on the bus in the morning.
This is a great part about McGinnis Sisters. You always get something to eat. We're constantly cooking and giving samples. This happens to be a Pitzel day, and they're so wonderful when they're just hot off the grill like that.
Demoing is something that we try to do as much as possible because we want you to taste something that you've never tried before and explore something different or have a flavor that might be completely new to you. Ooh, here's our grocery department. You can find a ton of great tasting specialty items, international items that are hard to find, as well as everyday groceries. We want to make sure that shopping's easy for our customers, and so you'll find a little bit of everything here at McGinnis Sisters, including some natural and organic products, as well as gluten-free and special needs items. You can see some of our gluten-free items there on the left. And there's some more specialty products. Stonewall Kitchen and Barefoot Contessa are so delicious.
I just love that so much. I really do feel like it showcases just the transformation that took place with that Adams Township location. And I do have a memory of the grand opening. I was in college at the time, and my mom, being who she was, the ever doting mother, and just the nature of the family business, my mom actually played over the loudspeaker for the party my college a cappella group's recently released CD. So McGinnis Sisters employees and customers got to enjoy the dulcet tones of something extra at Yale University. So thank you for putting up with that. But we are really kind of coming to the close of our program. I want to show one more video here, and then I'm going to open the Q&A so we can answer some of your questions. But this final video, I feel, really takes us full circle. It is a holiday video featuring a holiday ham, just like that earlier iteration you saw of Aunt Bonnie showcasing and Aunt Noreen showcasing those beautiful hams from the early 90s. And here we have this commercial that was shot more around 2015 or so, but you can just see how certain traditions, certain commitments, tenets of the business remain, especially that connection to the founders, to Elwood and Rosella, that commitment to family, but then the evolution of the brand as well as the McGinnis Sisters matured over time. So I'd love for our Heinz History Center colleagues to play that commercial clip, and then we will open up the Q&A after that.
A McGinnis Sisters ham is absolutely the easiest thing to have on your holiday table. We have a wonderful slow-smoked ham that my father originated almost 60 years ago.
They're hand-selected for us. They're antibiotic and hormone-free. Put a little bit of glaze on, and they'll think you've been cooking all day.
They're so tender, very low salt. You have to reserve today because the supply is limited. They go fast.
Bring your family back to the table. It's easy with McGinnis Sisters.
I love that commercial, and I love that saying of bring your family back to the table. And that actually ties into some of the questions that we have from our audience, specifically about Grandma Rosella's recipes. And they have a question, you know, were her recipes written down anywhere? Are there any plans for sharing those recipes? And, you know, I'm looking over my shoulder here, and I'll let my aunts and cousin fill you in, but this is my mother's copy of my Grandma Rosella's spiral bound recipe book that my aunts worked on putting together, I think in the 90s. But, you know, I know that we're probably gonna have some tears here because I love looking at my mother's handwriting on the front. She always annotated her recipes. But yeah, Aunt Noreen, Aunt Bonnie, Jen, do you wanna share any thoughts on the family recipes, what your favorites were and what plans we might have for the future?
Well, we put that together for her. My mother wanted, I didn't know, but she wanted a nice spiral bound, real printed book. And I had that I inquired with friends and employees and my siblings, and we gathered these recipes. My brother's was the favorite. He did an upside down cake, and we got messages from my dad and pictures and so forth. And I had it printed at Quick Copy, who was, Jackie was our printer for decades. And my mom said, well, it wasn't what I kind of wanted. She wanted, like the one that you would have gotten at your church that was open this way. But we all have that. Mine is shredded. It's in a million pieces. And my sister Lynn, who lives in Michigan, over the years kept saying, we've got to get this cookbook going. And I'd be like, oh, please. And so she mailed it to my house and I shipped it back. And so recently she has inquired with the second generation and her grandchildren, or anyone in our family who has a talent, to bring those recipes together. And for me, I'm thinking perhaps we could publish it and donate the proceeds to something that we all agree upon in Pittsburgh, but we really haven't fleshed that out. But the recipes are there, and it's really nice to be able to go back and see. And my mother had a lot of notes. She would put, a handful of this, or she called it sometimes a bloop, which I remember when we were bulking up the recipes, we said, Mom, you have to give us the exact measurements. You can't say a handful of, celery seed. That's not going to work. So we're going to think about that and what we could possibly do with it.
Yeah, we'll have to do a little bit of work because and I look at Grandma's recipes. The one that everyone likes to do is this apple cake. We didn't sell it at the store. It was more of a homemade dish, and it just says apples. But a young person today needs to know what kind of apples. But Grandma knew what kind of apples, and the cooks of her generation knew what kind of apples. I don't know that some of my colleagues where I work now would know which kind of apples to put in an apple cake so it doesn't turn out mushy. So it's interesting how some of that knowledge is lost, and it's a good thing that we can help to bring it back.
Yeah.
So we have another question from the audience that kind of takes a bird's eye perspective on the gourmet food industry, or just on the food industry in general. And they want to know, what kind of future do you think there is for small or medium-sized independent food stores like yours? Where do you think things are going in the age of Amazon Fresh and everything like that?
Well, I think we have to make a commitment to really support local businesses wherever they are. And it could be a local food store. It could be the local grower. Farmers markets are so ingrained in our experience now, which is important. And yet I think it's important that we make the extra effort to support those local purveyors, whether it be a non-chain dry cleaner or the bakery or where you get your flowers, because if we don't, those important pieces of history will fade away, and will be all subject to supply chain pressures that we might be seeing in the dry goods that are happening right now. And so I always root for the small independent stores or restaurants, and I would just advocate that we all do what we can to support them, because when you do support a local provider, you're really helping fuel a dream that they have had and that they've worked hard to create. And there's nothing better than that when you see people are enjoying the things that you make. And so I don't know what the future holds. I also am guilty of some convenience shopping, but I do my best to try to support local whenever I can. And I would just ask that everyone do the same.
I think recently you've seen some, like I live in near Zillionople, and we have a meat shop here that came in two or 3 years ago now. And, he's an old fashioned meat cutter. And it's lovely to go in there and to get what you would like. And I know there's one near Bonnie, there's one in the north side. So seeking those things out, yes, it is convenient to travel to your big chains. And that's the other thing. We don't just have a regional chain now. We have these national chains that have come in, and time is a crunch for people. So, but I do think the farm markets are lovely, especially in the summer, if you can get to one and taste things and learn new things. That's always a plus, 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 plus.
I
Yeah.
love that. And, I'm thinking maybe, I hate to even say we have a final question, but perhaps this is the final question. And that is, thinking back, between the three of you, you have decades of experience as entrepreneurs. I'd love to hear from all three of you if possible. What's your advice to people who aspire to go into business in general, or people who aspire to go into the food business? What would be the lessons learned or the general advice you would give them as they set out on what can be a really rocky road of entrepreneurship?
Well, I would start off with, if it's a family business, I would say, love one another. And I remember when my sisters and I, took over our business, I said, my motto was, I want my sisters to have a great life and be successful. And that was our guiding star. And we were able to work together and get everybody's input and come up with solutions.
Yeah, that's still in there. I had seen a woman of color speak at a NAWBO meeting. And I've contacted my old contacts at NAWBO, which is National Association of Women Business Owners. This woman said, act like a sponge. She had no education. She had quit school didn't finish, but yet she had landed one of the biggest contracts in Allegheny County. And she said, I go to every single meeting and act like a sponge. And that's even today, even not working in the business, I want to learn from people. I'm very curious because those opportunities are there. And then we would align ourselves with that wave as it was coming in because we were looking for it. We never kept our head down. We always kept our head up and our shoulders back. And we weren't afraid to walk into a room and it could have been filled with 80 men. It didn't matter. We were there to learn something. And I think that was at least how I approached it.
I would share just two quick things. First is that there are wonderful resources that are available for entrepreneurs who are trying to build their business, whether that's from the Small Business Administration. Here in Pittsburgh, we have the Chatham Center for Women's Business Entrepreneurship, and at Pitt, the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence. Every town has a small business administration where you can get free counseling and support to help you grow your business. And secondly, if you use those resources, you can focus on the things where you create the best value, and you can work with others to help you in your accounting or your marketing so that you could focus on the place where you can drive and grow your business. And sometimes entrepreneurs get hung up with doing everything else and being the head of HR and doing the head of marketing, where you should really be focusing on the thing where you can create the most value for your company, and you can work out the rest with partners that you can outsource with.
Thank you. Thank you all three of you, Aunt Bonnie, Aunt Noreen, Jen, for coming here tonight, for giving of yourself, for sharing your insights, for going down, memory lane with all of us hand in hand. It's been a beautifully emotional experience. And it's certainly made me feel closer to all of you. I miss home, I miss mom, I miss, Pittsburgh, but thank you for sharing your thoughts tonight. And so as much as I don't want to say goodbye, I wish we could keep this conversation going. I do want to hand the baton over to our wonderful friends at the Heinz History Center to close the program for the evening. And thank you all for attending and for believing in the memory of our business and what we contributed to Pittsburgh for over 70 years. It means so much to have you here, to have a chance to share these memories with you. So I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Oh, thank you all so much. That was just incredibly Beautiful. And I also just want to reiterate Ashley's thanks to each and every person that joined us here for this remarkably special evening of sharing in memories and garnering incredible insights into the legacy of this incredible family business. Before we close this evening, I just have a few reminders. First, we're really delighted to share 2 holiday recipes from the McGinnis Sisters archives that are, of course, now here preserved at the History Center. We've shared links to those in the chat, so please do consider incorporating them into your holiday celebrations over the next month or so. We also would love it if you consider taking a moment to complete our survey. We really value your feedback and are always eager to learn new ways on how to continue to enhance our programs. And again, a link as well has been shared in the chat. We really would welcome you to connect with us at the History Center if you haven't already. Links on where you can find us online can also be found in that chat. And if you're interested in more stories from our collection, we have a great program coming up called Treasures in the Archives, and that's going to be on Thursday, January 20th. Again, common theme, I'll drop a link to that specific program in the chat as well. Once again, I want to convey our sincerest thanks again to Ashley, Bonnie, Jennifer, and Noreen for a really beautiful evening. We appreciate all of the heartfelt reflection and the time that went into this event. And I also just want to take a moment and thank specifically the Smithsonian Museum of American History for their support of the program. Thanks as well go to our live captioner, Cindy, for hanging with us and making this program more accessible. Lastly, I'd like to thank some of my History Center colleagues for their incredible support, including Brady Smith, Carly Lowe, Christy Danner, Leslie Sibilic, Liz Dewar, Matt Strauss, Molly Petrilli, Phoebe Walzak, and Sarah Dunlap. Just a reminder that a recording of this event will be available on the History Center's YouTube page, so please do share it with those who weren't able to join us for this incredible evening. I just want to wish you all the happiest of holidays and thank you all so much again for joining us this evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.